Alright, I hope you guys are ready for this video, because I'm barely ready for this video. But you're really going to have to try really hard to stick with what I'm going to say. If you did not see the video where I talk about the origins of the AMD and who the AMD possibly could be, I suggest you watch that first, because there's going to be some terminology in here that is just going to come from left field if you don't know, and I may not go over it all the way, so I really suggest watching that video first and then coming to this one. Other than that, let's get to it.
I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Pull up, say what's the deal, bruh? See how I lose my cool any second if they don't hear us. Many people will fear us. Say when you look in the mirror, don't you compare us to anything they get embarrassed. Ha, ha, woo. So many people be talking like they want the problems or something. I noticed that all of you polish and all of you people get punished. It's hard to keep food on your stomach, to all of the hustle keep running. That's hard to stay humble with nothing. We're off of the jungle, we're bugging. So let me come down all of a sudden. I told you that we keep it buzzing. Ha, woo. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out. Bounce. I ain't feeling nothing cause I'm numbed out.
What's up, everyone? It is Jack OATz the GOAT. You either know or you don't. So, alright, as you can probably see by the title of this video, it is closing in on the AMD. Now, every time I decide to do videos, I always like to look and read into like lore and stuff, just to see if I can get any more headway on like who the AMD is. You know, it's just like a little side mission for me. And a little more, like I read more and more, and like more pieces start coming together, and I really think I'm onto something. And of course, I can be so wrong, and you know, it is what it is. But so far, it seems to make sense. Okay, so you're gonna see me looking down because I had to write this down. This is like, dude, this is like taking a mythology class all over again in college. Like, it's fun, but it's also like, dude, shit, it's a lot of work. All right, so in the last video, I'll kind of go over it briefly, okay? So I talk about what's called the Thamiel and the Keter. I also talk about the Cathrael, but we're not going to talk about the Cathrael in this video. It's more so the Thamiel and the Keter. So, like I said in the last video, maybe not the last video, but the last video concerning this subject, the AMD seems to be part of the Thamiel. And Thamiel were a part of angelic beings. They were actually cast from heaven for the fact that they added an aleph to their name. And what that means is that when you hear names like Raphael, Gabriel, whatever, that sort of stuff, they added that aleph to their name because they thought that they would get more respect and it would grant them power because they weren't necessarily the strongest beings, you know, in heaven. So by adding this aleph, they thought that they would get the respect that they wanted. When they were found out to be fraudulent, they were cast down from heaven into the lowest depths of hell. So the Thamiel were essentially fallen angels. They're not full-bred demons, right? So when you look at, when we're going to look at Clip-Off, it's like this little like pyramid thing, but it's not a pyramid. It's like a square in the middle, and then it's like triangle. You know, you've seen it. If you've seen the Shadow Palace thing, that's pretty much what Clip-Off looks like, okay? So at the very top, it's called Keter. And Keter is equal to light. It is the closest you can be to godliness. So what clip-off is, you have to understand, it is not exactly the opposite of the Tree of Life, or otherwise known as Yggdrasil. It is the shadow of it. Okay, so yes, while the concept may be opposite, using the correct terms, they would be the shadow. So you have clip-off, and then you have the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is pretty much the same, you know, shape and all that stuff. All right, they just have different names. Now, we were introduced to the fact that they were apostles of Sephiroth in the Black Clover universe, Lit being one of those apostles. Now, what's interesting is that we have a character like Zagrid, who somehow escaped from the underworld and was able to, you know, formulate this plot in real time in this realm. But how would he have escaped? It looks like there's an elaborate plot to open up the gates to the underworld. So how did Zagrid slip through? And that is the million-dollar question, okay? And I think I may have the answer. So I kind of go over it in the other video too, where the Apostles of Sephiroth were put in place to kind of act as the guardians to make sure that balance was in place. Now, if an apostle dies, what happens is it allows for that shadow of that apostle to get loose and roam free. Now, with all that said and done, let's get into what's going on. So, what I believe is that the Thaumael is AMD in the story. The anti-magic devil would be the Thaumael. And we've, of course, already seen, like, the fallen angel theory, and that's why he's got whipped wings. But to put a name on what he is the Thaumael. He's part of that. And when we look at what the opposite of AMD would be now, this is really kind of headcanon / it makes sense, so roll with me. So when we look at the opposites of, let's first look at Keter. Keter is the very top of the Tree of Life. Keter most directly represents, in this story so far, Lit. And Keter represents light, life, and godliness. Okay, so we already know that Lit was extremely blessed with mana. He was light. When we get the story that, you know, neither Sekre or Zagrid knew, one, who the demon was, and then two, where that demon came from, it kind of makes sense, because now let's look at it. We have Lit as an apostle, ended up dying, but his grimoire stuck around. Now, the grimoire sticking around could have been due to the fact that he was an apostle. I don't know how strong that stands, honestly, but let's go with it just for this, okay? Now, with him dying, the balance is thrown off, meaning that his shadow is able to enter this realm in probably more of like a Zagrid form-ish, right? But instead, it seems as though the anti-magic devil just stuck it out inside of the grimoire. Now, what is the opposite of light and life? It's exactly what the AMD is. He is devoid of life. He makes sure that mana, which is the essence of life, which is what we've been told in the story, is completely void of that grimoire. He makes sure that mana is dispelled, repelled, just completely dispersed. He is the exact opposite of what light / life would be, and would be the exact opposite of godliness. Okay, you see where I'm kind of going with that? So it would seem as though, you know, Zagrid found a place to slip out, but didn't exactly know that killing an apostle would result in, a demon being able to hold on to that grimoire. Possibly. I don't know. This is really big, like, stretch, but there's some parts of this that just does make sense. Okay, so let's go over the definition, sort of a Thaumael really quick. And then there's something really interesting that, well, we'll go over it, okay? The The Thaumael essentially represents individuality and a very honest acknowledgement of the self, which is not weak, but rather has the potential to be something strong if will is properly utilized and directed. Now, it was funny when I read that because they make a point to italicize the word willpower, right? Let's go to the very first chapter of the series. They hit the age of 14 or 15 and they get their grimoires. Well, Yuno gets his, right? And then Asta's left just kind of down and out without a grimoire until Rebchi shows up and then puts Yuno in a tough spot. Asta shows up, he kicks Asta against the wall. Asta's kind of losing hope. But then all of a sudden, Yuno says, like, who are you calling weak? That guy's my rival. And it shows his pendant. Okay? When it shows his pendant, Asta is gaining his will back, his will to fight back. And that clash of wills birthed the grimoire coming out of the wall. Now, a lot of this has to do with circumstance and causality, and it's such a complicated thing to explain. And this is why I'm really interested in the story, is because it aligns with a lot that I've studied in physics, in philosophy, and all of that stuff. Cause and effect plays a lot of it, and it really it begs the question of, like, do we believe in fate and circumstance, or do we actually have free will over what we do with our lives and all that stuff? But that's a little deeper than I need to get. But the fact of the matter is that it says if the will is properly utilized and directed, then that has the Thaumael has the potential to get strong. So with Yuno's will exacting on Asta and Asta exacting his own will on himself, I do believe caused the pendant to react and have that grimoire come out of the wall and supply to Asta. This brings me to like a very side tangent. You've already know my stance on the pendant itself. I do believe it's a form of like the Bayolet in Berserk. And we've already seen that that stone in the Shadow Palace was like that stone to actually make things happen. This is what causes things to happen physically in the here and now. And with Yuno exacting that will, it just shows that, because there's also another instance in chapter 11, I believe. They're in the dungeon and they're fighting Mars. Now, Asta is about to die. Mars is about to crush him with the diamond sword. But Yuno, he kind of has the same moment where it's like, who you calling weak? That's my rival. Instead he goes like, I don't have a spell in my grimoire that's that fast. Like, I can't reach him. But then it shows the four-leaf on the grimoire, just like it showed the pendant as he's saying that. And then he gets Sylph. So what I am thinking right now is that, number one, the pendant is just like the Bayolet. What it does is exact will outside of the user. So if the user wants that person to get strong, that person will get strong. Now, if the user itself wants to get stronger, the four-leaf grimoire supplies that will to its user, but they have to have that will to want to get stronger, to want to live. So in short, the four-leaf grimoire, I think the function of that is to exert that will on oneself, and then the pendant is to exert that will to the outside world, outside of the user. So Yuno kind of has control over himself and the world around him, as long as that willpower is strong enough. But I just want to go into that because I do think Yuno is just as much needed for the AMD as the AMD needs Asta. I think it's no coincidence that, you know, when they're both side by side, one wing's on the right side and then one wing's on the left side. You know, you know, of course it's like, oh, they're good friends, but that shows there's a deeper connection. And I think that connection overall is the AMD. Now, something really, really interesting happens, okay? When I'm reading, there are two leaders of the Thaumael. Two. So if the AMD is actually part of the Thaumael, and he's the exact shadow of Keter, he would be one of the rulers of the Thamael. Okay, but then who would be the other one? And the other one, that name is called Moloch. And I didn't get to read too much into him because I wanted to get these videos out. I had 2 other videos before this one. I've also got to edit my podcast. I've got to go film my podcast, and then I'm being featured on another one. So like I'm really like up to my neck in a lot of shit. But I wanted to bring this out, and I'm sorry I don't have too much information on Moloch, but of course you can look this up yourself. So Moloch is known for like child sacrifices, and he doesn't seem like the most amazing person to be around. And what's interesting is that just like every religion, they have different interpretations. So Moloch is viewed as a separate entity, or it can be Lucifer. And just like what I'm about to get into, the AMD could in fact be Satan. And in a lot of texts, Satan and Lucifer are 2 very separate beings. So it's possible that these are 3 separate beings overall. Now, my personal theory right now is that when Dante explains the clip-off plan to Yami, we get this vision of what clip-off looked like. And then in this recent chapter, we're figuring out like, okay, wait, or not recent chapter, but like recent chapters with Veronica, and the queen going to her library, that clip-off had to have happened before for anyone to have an idea of what this will look like and how to pull it off. So with that in mind, when you look at the silhouettes of what's going on with the clip-off plan, we see people's like heads popping off of their bodies. We saw children hanging, and that was the telltale sign of Moloch, because Moloch is associated with child sacrifice. Okay, so what I think is happening is that we have 3 beings that are vying for power, but maybe not so much 3 as 2 are teamed up, and then 1 they're fighting against the other one for power. I believe, and I don't know the hows, I don't know the specifics, I don't have the facts on this because I'm reading what you're reading, and I can only gather so much before it just becomes headcanon. What if Asta was somewhat a sacrifice? Like they sacrificed his mana, which is your life essence is mana. And that's what they say is the life essence of everything, right? So what if they somehow sacrificed his mana for him to be like the husk itself, which would be Cathrael, would be Moloch. And then Moloch and the Thamael, the AMD, which would be Satan, is looking to be that extra force where they lack the mana. They are the anti-mana, anti-life. They are the void. So together, they're creating this being, and then what we see is Asta creating these extra horns that do not belong to the AMD whatsoever. So what I believe is happening is that Moloch and the AMD, who I believe is Satan, are coming together, and together are becoming strong, and are becoming one being that we've never seen before. But that would probably look more like Licht's power when he perverted his own body and all of that. I kind of said all this in the last video, but then it all comes together when we see Asta versus Dante, right? So in Asta versus Dante, when Asta finally gets slumped after that nice boxing match, like when Dante, oh man, those were like dirty moves. But when he slumped Asta's kind of coming to, and the AMD is going nuts, like he's going wild. Like we haven't seen that before. And he's saying, "I'm gonna kill you, like I freaking hate you," and he was just saying, "Kill, kill, kill." And we've never seen a reaction like this from the AMD, and it wasn't directed towards Asta though, because we've seen the AMD interact with Asta, and it's more like a suggestion, like, "Hey, you should let me take over, man." And you know, it seemed more friendly. Honestly, that's what it seemed like. It seemed more friendly than it was malevolent. But to react like that in the presence of Lucifer makes a lot of sense when you put it together with what I just said. Because the Thamael and Moloch, or I keep confusing names, Satan and Moloch have been fighting Lucifer to be the ruler. Because the Thamiel just want to be acknowledged and accepted, and they want to be the penultimate being wherever they are. So they're always going to be fighting for that ultimate power. So it makes sense that the AMD just flipped out on Lucifer, because he's exactly what he hates. He wants to hold that power, that respect. But he can't, because he's not weak. He's not strong by himself. He's weak. So he needs Asta to get stronger. And if Asta, in fact, is somehow Moloch, just the form of Moloch in human form or something, then it would make sense. And if the AMD, learns how to cooperate with this body more and more, like we're seeing, we're going to see a different being altogether. And that being could just be a lot of trouble for the entire world. And of course, we don't really know, like, I haven't done too much reading, after the Thamiel fall. I don't know if their objective is to take out, like, humans, because Lucifer is supposed to be the bane of humans. Satan is a fallen angel, and I don't know if the struggle is to get back at heaven or to maybe just cause trouble wherever he is. That I need to do a little more research on. But I thought I'd bring you guys this because I thought it was super interesting, how it's just so happens that Licht had light magic. The very opposite of light magic, or the shadow of light, is void. It's anti-magic. And it's the farthest thing from God, where Licht is the closest thing to God as far as power goes. And just so you guys know, in the text, Keter does not exactly mean God. It means you're close to God. It's the closest you can be. But yeah, I think it makes sense, being the Thamiel, a fallen angel, and then, Asta's body being monoliths and being the perfect host for the anti-magic devil. And then somehow Yuno playing a part of this and in making that happen. But I also do believe somehow Yuno still plays a part in this unification of these beings. I don't know how. I will do more meth and more cocaine to, rack my brain over what's, okay, I'm not going to do drugs, guys, don't do drugs. But look, I'm going to do a lot more thinking. It's just something I came across today, and I was like, dude, this makes too much sense to me. But you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit me up on Twitter. Like, subscribe, dislike, don't subscribe, unsubscribe, leave hate comments. Don't follow me on Twitter. Hate me on Twitter. It's all good. It's all love. It's all love, you guys. But it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been Jack OATz. You either know or you don't.